Greetings, and welcome to A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. For this project, we are using the Ivan Walters reference book of 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Each day, we watch a movie associated with the date we are watching it on. And as it is January 15th, we will be watching The Bounty from 1985, directed by Richard Donaldson and starring Mel Gibson. So to begin with, I had seen this movie quite a while ago. Probably saw it again in the early days of cable movies and whatnot, like the movie channels that we had in Canada at the time. I do remember watching because I like sort of swashbuckling looking movies and whatnot, and that's definitely what this is. It is definitely a high seas voyage and whatnot. But I'm probably sure at the time I wasn't really aware of what it really was to begin with. And I had seen a couple of versions of Mutiny on the Bounty to begin with. Now this is obviously a more highbrow version than a lot of the stuff that has been out there, or at least the ones that I've seen prior to this. And this is quite a undertaking of this storyline. So this movie has a quite impressive cast, and I think some of these actors that I had seen at the time originally watching the movie didn't really mean much to me, but when you look at the perspective of this time in history, we've got Mel Gibson, Anthony Hopkins, Laurence Olivier, Edward Fox, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Liam Neeson. In probably the earliest role that I think I've probably seen Liam Neeson in. It's kind of interesting because in the scene where they introduce his character, his voice is more recognizable first before you actually physically see him. The story is of a voyage of the HMS The Bounty, as its mission is to go to Tahiti and transport breadfruit from there to the Caribbean. Now, the gentleman in charge, Lieutenant Bligh, who is played by Anthony Hopkins, and his goal is to use this mission to plot a route that allows him to circumvent the whole entire Earth, like the whole entire sea, in one mission, which is his life's goal to do that. Unfortunately, the lateness of their original arrival doesn't allow them to pick up their cargo right away, so they have to wait, and their mission gets delayed several months, making it impossible for them to travel the route that they want to. The frustration of having to leave this area that a lot of the men have decided to call quote-unquote home brings upon a charge of mutiny among the men. There's a small little mutiny, and then a bigger mutiny, and then eventually stuff gets all settled in the end for at least our main British officers and whatnot. But it's really a wonderful package to see everyone working in either close quarters of the ship, or out with the natives on in Tahiti, where they spend most of their time. And it's a very interesting movie to watch. I wasn't completely blown away by it. Mind you, seeing Anthony Hopkins and all them doing their acting and all that sort of thing, very British upper class sort of hip hip and all that sort of thing. It was really great to see young friggin' Daniel Day-Lewis in his role of, again, doing the British countryman's best in His Majesty's Navy is always great to see. The defiant Liam Neeson, and even seeing Mel Gibson, who I haven't watched a movie of his in a while, for the main part that he hasn't done a lot, but I haven't really reflected on any of his early career, and this is pretty early in his career to begin with. It's just a good movie to enjoy. So at the end of the movie, when the Bounty has its mutinous crew on board as it sails to salvation, it's searching for Pitcairn Island, as its salvation way. It's an area that's not on any actual British maps. It's just spoken about in logs. Christian, who is Mel Gibson, eventually gets his team to this island, and they arrive at the island on January 15th, 1790, at about 2 hours and 2 minutes into a 2 hour and 12-minute movie. So yeah, it's at the very end that we get an actual date. And as it is January 16th, we will be watching the Benny Goodman story from 1954, directed by Valentine Davies and starring Steve Allen. So it looks like we're getting into a common theme so far with this list. This is the first time I've actually seen this movie. I'm aware of its existence, and I'm pretty sure I've seen a lot of the performances throughout the years, just from clips and whatnot, from different shows that I've watched. I've seen Steve Allen doing his best clarinet playing and whatnot. I'm also a fan of Steve Allen to begin with. His career as a comedian and as the host of Tonight, when it was originally in New York before Johnny Carson took over. But I don't think I've seen Steve Allen in this sort of a leadership role as the main cast member of any of the shows or movies that I've seen him in. He's always appeared as like a secondary character, or for the most part later on in his career would show up as Steve Allen in different shows, and actually even voicing characters in cartoons. But that being said, this is the first time I saw this movie. So along with Steve Allen, this movie stars Donna Reed, Bertha Gertson, Hubert Anderson, and Robert F. Simon. Here we go again with another biopic, which is kind of interesting to see the golden age of movies. Now, while the acting is nothing really exciting to witness, it's very standard acting, and it's not like it's terrible acting. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed watching this movie. I'm also the fact that a lot of Benny Goodman's music is in it, and I enjoyed the sound of his music, of the style, and it was quite entertaining to see a biopic of a gentleman who, to be honest, I didn't know much more about his life other than the music that we would hear. Benny Goodman, big fan at my grandparents' place, so very well aware of Benny Goodman himself as the performer. It was nice to see this acting arrangement of his life. It seemed more like a lot of stage delivery of a lot of lines. There was a great bunch of like secondary characters and all that were fun to watch, and seeing him working his way. But a lot of the movie seemed to be truncated. Like there was a lot of time jumps in between scenes. Like all of a sudden a couple of months down the line, and there was no indication, and you had to catch up a little later on, which is a problem with storytelling to begin with. But again, it was an entertaining movie to watch. It was a something that I definitely would not have seeked out on my own, even though, like I said, I'm a fan of biographies. This one probably would not have been high on a list if I was given, especially when it comes to musical biographies, which is always quite entertaining. But again, this was serviceable. I was not bored watching the movie. It was just a delight to see a movie of this era on the screen. Now, the end of the movie actually culminates with an actual history point in Benny Goodman's actual storyline, and that is of January 16th, 1938, where he plays Carnegie Hall, which plays out at 1 hour and 42 minutes into an hour and 56-minute movie. So, there you go. And as it is January 17th, we'll be watching The Reversal of Fortune from 1990, directed by Barbette Schroeder and starring Glenn Close. So I'm enjoying this running theme of this project, and yet another unwatched movie by me, which is, again, another reason why I'm doing this particular project, to see a lot more movies and to talk about those that I have before. To begin with, I don't even think I even knew about the history that this story is loosely based on. A man accused of putting into coma his wife on 2 occasions, him being convicted of being charged for that, and then him retaliating to get his name cleared and that. And that's what this movie is all about. So the movie stars Glenn Close, Jeremy Irons, Ron Silver, Uta Hagen, Annabelle Sciorra, Fisher Stevens, Jack Kilpin, and Christine Baranski. So this movie is an interesting way to go through a court drama, which technically isn't really a court drama. It's the proceedings to get to a court. An interesting thing about this movie is it picks up when Ron Silver's character of Alan Dershowitz is brought in to try to help Klaus Van Blau, who is Jeremy Irons, to overturn the conviction of his, again, attempted murder of his wife, Sunny, who is Glenn Close. Now, this movie takes place as the story draws out, as Ron Silver collects a team together to figure out how to overturn the conviction. As we discover along the story, we find out through flashbacks what happened in different situations from different points of view. To supplement this, we actually start off with the very beginning of the movie with a ghostly voiceover of Glenn Close as she narrates the here and the now of what's going on. She has this periodically throughout the movie, this voiceover of pushing the narrative of the story forward by giving insight to the family and the situation and her feelings. So as the events go through, we get, hey, how did this happen? And then we go into a flashback and we see a younger Jeremy Irons and a younger Glenn Close having like their relationship and whatnot during different phases. We jump to a couple of years ago, and then we jump back way to the first time that they encountered each other. We're dealing with fantastic actors to begin with. Now, Glenn Close really isn't in this movie a lot. It's definitely a Ron Silver movie and Jeremy Irons, who does this fantastic Jeremy Irons best as a character. We're dealing with the 1990s, so this is a fantastic look into the upper class echelon of society and how it deals with the rich. Again, it's a very interesting way to tell a murder mystery, technically. It's just fantastic. Again, acting course from, again, fantastically done by Ron Silver and Jeremy Irons. They work so well together. One of the, again, dealing with a movie from the 90s, one of the things that could be considered a very prominent co-host, like co-star throughout this whole entire film, is cigarettes. Because, again, we're dealing with an era when everybody smoked everywhere all the time. And there are several smokes being lit and smoked throughout this whole entire thing. At one point, it's like during a conversation, Glenn Close and Jeremy Irons are having a conversation. Glenn Close finishes off one smoke and then just lights up another one and goes right through it. She's smoking in bed at some points. And it's just a different time of filmmaking back in the 1990s. So very early in the movie, we establish a timeline of when certain things happened for the movie. And as it turns out, at about 28 minutes into the film, Fisher Stevens' character admits to have sold drugs to Sonny's son, and that date just happens to be the 17th of January, 1983. So when it comes to the Academy Awards, we're back on the Academy Awards after being removed from them for a little while. This movie got a little bit of attention, giving Jeremy Irons the Best Actor Award. And it also was nominated for Best Director and Best Adapted Screenplay. And as it is the 18th of January, we are going to be watching Logan's Run from 1976, directed by Michael Anderson and starring Michael York. So full disclosure, This is one of the early sci-fi movies that I can remember watching on TV that I really, really enjoyed. Being a sci-fi fan from a very early age, of course, 77 means Star Wars, so I would want to watch any sort of sci-fi movie that was out there. This is probably, can't remember when I first saw it, but it was probably an early, like, Saturday afternoon movie that I would have seen, and just really loved the look of the film, the action of the film. And of course, later on to realize a lot more of this movie, but that's further on and all that. But yes, I have seen this movie several times, and I do currently own a copy on DVD of this movie too. So along with Michael York, we also have Richard Jordan, Jenny Agutter, Farrah Fawcett, and Peter Ustinov. So this takes place in a utopian future where everyone is beautiful, everyone is young, everyone is energetic and full of entertainment. And when it comes to your 30th birthday, you take part in a ceremony that moves you on to the next plane of existence. There are characters who disagree with this procedure and become what they classify as runners. Then we have a team of technically bounty hunters referred to as Sandman that go after these runners, and that's where we meet up with our main character of Logan 5 and his best friend Francis 7, which are Michael York and Richard Jordan. Story goes on, plays out, turns out this utopian future isn't as glorious as it is. The mainframe system that is running this whole entire civilization believes that quite a few runners have been able to actually escape the city, and Logan is forced into finding them by leaving the city gates and all that. And one thing runs into another and whatnot. So this is a very charming and sometimes cheesy sort of movie. It is a sci-fi from the mid-70s, but it has that charm to it. Everything is bright and vibrant colors. Everything looks so shiny and new, which is kind of neat to see. There are a lot of really interesting use of models for this. They do have models of like the city that look like models. They're not really shot at the right scale to make them look like actual things. They look like a theme park display of the model of a utopian society. But they also do a good choice of like splicing the miniatures over top of actual footage of people walking around, which is a very keen way of doing it for, again, special effects from the middle of the 70s. But like I said, it's something I saw as a young kid, and it just fascinated me, I think, because it was more readily available to watch constantly. I did come to later on watching it on, like I said, those movie channels that we would have back in Canada back in the day. And of course, I do own a copy of this movie. But yeah, so it's again, it's a great adventure. It is very dated. Just costuming, hairstyles, makeup, special effects, all date the movie for the mid-70s. But if you're going into it with that attitude, then definitely you're going to enjoy yourself with this movie. It's a fun look at sci-fi from a time when sci-fi was fun to watch. So pretty much at the end of the movie is when we discover, at about an hour and 43 minutes into a 1 hour and 59 minute movie, that our characters are returning back to the city on January 18th, the year being 2274, just as the latest carousel is actually happening. So again, it's a classic sci-fi film. It has an excellent plot and, for the time, really good special effects. The performances are very well executed, and like I said, it's an entertaining show. The movie also ended up getting the Academy Award for Special Achievement in Visual Effects, And it was also nominated for Best Cinematography and Best Art Direction. And as it is the 19th of January, we will be watching Fried Green Tomatoes from 1991, directed by John Avnet and starring Kathy Bates. So, to begin with, I can't be 100% honest if I've already seen this movie or not. Pretty sure I hadn't, but as I'm watching it, a lot of actual full-on scenes are familiar to me. So I'm not 100% sure if I saw it way back in the day and all that. I do not own a copy of this movie, that is for sure. Another rewatching of it, this time watching it, is a rewatch. Because, like I said, a lot of it seemed familiar. I did know a lot of the story plot points to the fact that leans to me having seen this prior, but to be honest, I would not been able to actually tell you anything really about it except for like the basic storyline. This movie stars Kathy Bates, Mary Stuart Matheson, Mary Louise Parker, Jessica Tandy, Cicely Tyson, Chris O'Donnell, and Stan Shaw. So this is a story of a woman trying to live her life in a life that she no longer enjoys being in. She's in a sort of kind of almost loveless marriage with her husband. She's going to different classes to try and correct, quote unquote, correct that problem. She then, as they are visiting her husband's relative in an old age home, she runs into this older woman, Ninny, played by Jessica Tandy, who then, throughout the course of the story, starts retelling the life of Edgy Thorogood. So a lot of this is told through flashbacks and whatnot. We experience both the here and now, which is the 90s, going way back to the 1920s, where the pre-story is told through, and through different stories and tribulations. Kathy Bates learns to adapt her life to something that more is enjoyable for her through listening to these wonderful stories, and it just gets to the point where her life turns around, and these stories are what helps her change over the several months of her visiting this older woman. The backstory deals with two women way back at the time running the Whistle Stop Cafe at a train station, where they have African American people on the staff. The story deals with a woman being pulled away from her abusive husband. It deals with a tragedy of a young girl losing a caring brother at a very young age. I'm telling this all out of sorts and whatnot. We also end up dealing with a murder mystery at one point and a courtroom drama at others. But again, it's just a fascinating tale being told, and you feel the era, the way it's being told through this flashback series through Jessica Tandy's words. So at just about 52 minutes into the movie of a 2 hours and 16-minute movie, we have Evelyn having an encounter at a grocery store, and then ends up going to the nursing home, crying to meet with Nitty, and that is what happens on the date of January 19th, 1986. So it's a sweet story. Both ends of the story don't have a real wrap up to the 20s storyline, as again, they're just stories being told, so not 100% sure how true to life they actually are. Part of the backstory is telling tales to lighten someone's mood, or to energize them, or to change their perception of the world, which kind of is what happens with this. There's a lot of comedy, and there's a lot of tragedy in this movie. It's a very enjoyable performance by a mainly female cast. I mean, we have our two modern day female actors and our two past actresses, both working beautifully together all the time. It's always nice to see Jessica Tandy acting all energy and whatnot in her later years in acting, and up against Kathy Bates, who's always doing a fantastic job. But yeah, so it's a good movie, and like I said, it's a bit tragic. There's some language that the first time a certain word is uttered, it like my ears pricked up, and I'm like, okay, I understand. It's set in the 20s, and this movie is from the 90s, so I guess it's a little more common that you can slip that sort of thing in. Definitely would not pass in a movie nowadays, especially in a movie that deals with the Ku Klux Klan. It's almost kind of, the words have to be there. But that being said, so for the Academy Awards, it got a nomination for Best Supporting Actress from Jessica Tandy, and it also got one for Best Adapted Screenplay. All right, so as it is the 20th of January, that means we will be watching Patriot Games from 1992, directed by Philip Noyce and starring Harrison Ford. So to begin with, this goes into the echelon of Harrison Ford movies. A huge fan of Harrison Ford from the first time I saw him on screen, way up until like present day. Anything Harrison Ford is in is always going to be something that I'm going to watch, whether or not it's spectacular or not. I'm still going to enjoy myself because of the Harrison Ford of it all. So this movie also is part of an ongoing series, several times rebooted with different actors. It originally started off with Alec Baldwin in the previous movie, Hunt for October. We also have Harrison Ford reprise the role in Clear and Present Danger, and then we flip it around to a prequel with The Sum of All Fears with Ben Affleck, and then we have a Chris Pine interpretation of the Jack Ryan story. And then we go into the John Krasinski series on Amazon, which in itself is quite enjoyable. But this particular one, besides starring Harrison Ford, also stars Anne Archer, Patrick Bergin, Sean Bean, Thor Birch, James Fox, Samuel L. Jackson, and Ellen Greer. If you're a fan of the Jack Ryan series, you know that this particular movie itself, like quite a few of them, are based on the novels by Tom Clancy. And this is one of those, Patriot Games. It deals with a gentleman, Jack Ryan, who, portrayed by Harrison Ford, is on technically a business trip of some sort over in England. He ends up thwarting an attempt on someone from the royal family's life, feeding into a more radical version of the IRA. And the story progresses. People get arrested, people die. Jack helps convict one of the surviving assassins and goes back to his home life, breaks out of prison, comes over to America, starts their own coalition. One thing turns to another, and we end up with a really great spy thriller from the 90s, when it was a great time to tell these sort of tales. These Jack Ryan movies that are like centered in on reality are just a treat to watch. Not only do we have a fantastic cast that work beautifully together. I mean, your lead man is Harrison Ford, so you're looking at a good acting job, and again, everyone around him just ups their game. He so perfectly plays the different roles: the loving father, the doting husband, the serious analyst. It's just fantastic. The whole entire movie culminates with not a lot of action, but we do get a couple of really cool stunt sequences in cars. We actually end with a very great climactic sequence at the end that just ups the ante from previously in the movie. And when it concludes with a fabulous stunt sequence that keeps you on the edge of your seat, the way it's so perfectly shot by mixing fantastic live action, all practical too, effects in studio close up with actors, and all of the bells and whistles that goes into making this a fantastic sequence. And of course, we end up on a fabulous ending note that makes this such an enjoyable ride. Like I said earlier, Harrison Ford returns for another go at this, and For the most part, the Jack Ryan movie series is quite an entertaining series to go through. And again, can't say too much about this. It has a great high level of suspense throughout the whole entire thing. And the like I said, the action sequences are so well done. So at the beginning of this movie, about 5 minutes in an hour and 57 length movie, we are revealed the date of the actual incident happening, the attack on Lord Holmes, which happens to be on January 20th. In this case, it's 1992. One thing I want to add before I wrap this up is a lot of the movies that I'm doing with this project, for the most part, ones that I've probably seen before, and like this one again, I have watched several times before, so I know it pretty well. I just rewatch to refresh myself. So sometimes I do have a second screen going on. For the most part, especially the movies that I've never seen before, it's just singular focus on the one movie. But this movie, I just happen to have a YouTube video playing off in the background that I really wasn't paying any attention to until whatever I was watching at the time went to its own, YouTube commercials, and it actually ended up showing me a trailer for the newest season of Shrinking that's currently airing on Apple TV. So just kind of a strange coincidence that happened to happen. And as it is the 21st of January, we are going to be watching Sweet Dreams from 1985, directed by Carol Rise and starring Jessica Lange. So to begin with, we hit yet another biography on this list of movies, which is, again, like I've mentioned before, one of my favorite things to actually partake. And again, dealing with a musical legend of Patsy Cline's life, or at least her professional life. That is, we are dealing with a fantastic telling of a era and time that I personally was not aware of. While I do know the very small handful of songs that the small handful of songs that Patsy Cline actually did produce for herself, I was unaware of the story that went around her whole entire career and tragic end to her life. Needless to say, this is a first-time watch for me. So this movie stars Jessica Lange and Ed Harris, Anne Wedgeworth, David Glennon, James Stately, Gary Basaraba, John Goodman, and PJ Soles. So again, we're dealing with the life of Patsy Cline just prior to her starting to get her music career on track. She does a lot of dive bar singing, spewing out her talented voice in the classical country manner. She comes across a gentleman caller of sorts in the guise of her soon-to-be future husband of Charlie Dick, played by Ed Harris, who, shock of all shocks, seeing Ed Harris with hair is just a fascinating thing. But at the very early points in this movie, at about 30 minutes into an hour and 55-minute movie, Patsy has an appearance on the Godfrey Goodford Amateur Hour. And while it's not specifically documented in the actual movie itself, actual history tells us this event actually happened on January 21st in 1957. So she goes on to win that amateur by applause. That goes into getting her a contract. Her song goes up onto the Billboard charts. She starts making a little money. Her and Charlie have a child together. He then gets drafted. They work with this troublesome trying to keep the family together, or the fact that he's a bit abusive when he gets drunk. And just things go through all sorts of trials and tribulation for not only her professional but her personal life. So throughout this, we see her performing and recording I Fall to Pieces, and we also see her doing her own version of Crazy, and then eventually ending up with recording Sweet Dreams, which was her final song to be published. Then as the rift between her and Charlie start to spread even further apart, after a delay of flying home after an event. She tragically, along with 3 other people, die in a plane crash. Tragically, she gets her life cut short at age 30. Now, 2 things about this movie. Again, we're looking with a movie that takes place in a certain era when everybody smoked. And it was made at an era when everybody still smoked. So it's just, people are constantly, like, cigarette in hand, lit, just handing off, like, from one to another. And it just seems like some sort of, like, actual communication, even, the fact that you have to have a constant smoke in your hand. And another thing, again, relating to this movie as part of this series, now I've run into what I knew was going to happen. I'm going to be seeing a lot of movies. Yes, you don't say, huh? So I am definitely going to be running into actors repeating themselves on this list. So far, we've had Harrison Ford on here twice. We've had Anthony Hopkins on here twice. We've had quite notable names also on this list that I am sure as hell definitely going to be seeing again. However, the one that actually struck me as like, oh my god, that's number 3, is Gary Barcaba, who in this movie plays a friend of Charlie's that works in the printing shop that they work together in before Patsy makes it big. He goes by the name of Woodhouse, where 2 days ago on this list in Fried Green Tomatoes, he portrayed Grady Kilgore, the sheriff of the town. Now, as expressed at the very end of the movie, just as the credits are starting, it depicts that the music that you heard being performed is actually Patsy Cline herself. It's taken from the original recordings that were made at the time of the actual events happening. And while the movie did get recognition from the Academy Awards, it actually only just got nominated for Best Actress for Jessica Lange. All right, so as we're going to wrap up this particular episode, we're going to look into the future to see what's coming up next for the 22nd of January, and that is going to be Zulu from 1964. So until next time, go see a movie. This has been A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Once again, another thanks to Ivan Walters for his book, A Year of Movies, 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Look for it online or at your local bookstore. Follow Planet Geek Productions on all of our social media. Through Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, and Letterboxd, search for Planet Geek Productions. On X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. You can also reach out to us through email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, go see a movie.